If you've just joined us, this is CD 2. I hope you've listened to CD 1 before listening to CD 2.
Would you just shut up, Bob?
Anyway, we've got to the point in the Python story where they're all about to get together. We've tracked the individual Pythons' involvement in shows such as I'm Sorry, I'll Read That Again, Do Not Adjust Your Set, At Last the 1948 Show, and The Complete and Utter History of Britain. In fact, it was time for something completely different. And it was John Cleese who started the ball rolling.
And then we used to watch Do Not Adjust Your Set. It was our treat on a Thursday afternoon. Graham and I would finish early and watch that because it was the funniest thing on television. And eventually, feeling that Connie had settled into London, I said to Graham, why don't we ring the guys and see if they want to do a show with us? They weren't very keen because they just had an offer from Philip Jones at Thames Television. And for a couple of weeks, they were wondering whether to go with Philip Jones. And I think if they'd gone with Philip Jones, they wouldn't have gone with Graham and me. I think Philip wanted to take Do Not Adjust Your Set. So I was coming along offering a whole different deal. And after a couple of weeks with presumably talking to Philip Jones a few times, then they came back and said, OK, well, we've given up on that. Let's do it together.
Here's Michael Palin.
The body of the phone call was that John wanted to work with Terry and myself because he liked our material. And I think that included Eric as well, because he must have been referring to Do Not Adjust Your Set as well as Complete Utter History.
John Cleese and Michael Palin had worked together previously on a very annoying show called How to Irritate People,
which was the show which John asked me to do with him in 1968, was that?
Yeah.
And that was quite important because that was the first time I'd ever worked with John and Graham as an actor and as a writer. And that was very much like a mini Python, except that I wasn't writing with Terry. I was an actor with their material, but we sort of changed it a little bit in rehearsal. I got the feeling from what John said that he wanted to do something in which we would be in control. He wanted to work with me again. That had been very good. Obviously, I like, writing with Terry and probably Eric. He and Graham felt that they would like to collaborate with us. And Barry had talked to Terry Jones and myself over a period of a year about writing sort of comedy playhouse things or writing a series of our own and all that.
But very much as writers.
Yes, as well as writers and as performers as well.
My recollection is that Barry Took somehow got involved at some point.
John Cleese.
And was very useful. I think we had a couple of discussions at his flat, and then I think we went to see Michael Mills, and we gave a very poor account of ourselves. Him asking if we were going to have guest stars in music and film, and we weren't able to give him a satisfactory answer to anything he asked us. And at the end he said, all right, we'll make 13 programs, which I think will go down as one of the great executive decisions of all time, and something that really wouldn't happen for a split second today anywhere that I've ever worked in the last few years, except possibly Canadian broadcasting.
Eric Idle.
And I think that Barry was instrumental in getting it sold to the BBC or getting them excited in that side. The story I overheard was that the BBC have to book you, and contractors called it Barry Took's Flying Circus because they couldn't tell what it was. It was this madness, all these people.
Right.
And that's what it became known as. We definitely had the words Flying Circus in the title given to us. That's what we had to take. Yeah.
Part 4.
Now, I wrote that, It's a pretty good line, one of my best.
How important was the title? Because there's an awful lot of variations on the theme.
Yeah, well, it seemed very important, yeah.
Terry Jones.
And it was a bit of a nightmare because we just couldn't agree on the title. It just seemed like we never would. And until you had the title, you didn't really, you couldn't really say what it was in a funny way, We just knew it was going to be a funny show, but And I must say, I was a bit alarmed because I didn't like Bun, Whack-It, Buzzard, Stubble and Boot, which was the title that was decided on. And I didn't like that, actually, but I kind of was outvoted on it. So I was rather pleased when the BBC came back and said that it was too silly and we had to think of a more sensible title.
Michael Palin.
And it goes back to the sort of mischievous ideas we had, like calling the show Gwen Dibley's Flying Circus after a lady called Gwen Dibley, whose name I'd read in the Women's Institute magazine at my mother-in-law's home. Just the idea that someone wakes up in the morning and they're in the Radio Times, they've got their own show.
They never knew.
They never knew.
They said they'd been calling it Barry Took's Circus or something, so we had to call it something else. So we said, well, Flying Circus, definitely. And then there'd been the Gwen Dibley suggestion quite early on. And so we kind of went back to that, but then thought, not quite right. And then it was really just, my memory of it was just sitting around and Eric saying, somebody saying, it should be somebody sort of seedy showbiz agent, and Eric saying something like Monty. And then we said, yeah, and then John said, well, something nasty like Python, and we said Monty Python, and we said, oh yeah, so spot on. And I was very sure. I went back and told my brother, I said, we got a title for the show, we're going to call it Monty Python's Flying Circus, and he said, oh, it'll never catch on, it'll never work. My brother had a good sense for these things, but not that time.
That first recording, which I believe possibly, depending on the dates in various books, is August the 30th. What do you remember of that night?
Obviously, we were a bit apprehensive. This was the first time we were actually going to go in front of an audience.
Michael Palin.
And I seem to remember John coming up before the show was due to go out, and instead of sort of slapping you on the back saying, right, good luck, break a leg and all that, he said, do you realise this could be the first comedy show to go out with absolutely no laughs at all? Which of course was very good. That cheered me up no end. And
but it really was. They got an audience of old people who really thought they were coming to see a circus, and of course they had no idea what it was or who any of us were. It was a totally inappropriate audience, and they were very starchy. They didn't really like it at all.
But the laughter it wasn't raucous by any means. You actually looked at that first show. It was quite quiet. And at the end, one didn't really quite know. We were just so pleased that we'd done it. We got it done and we played all these silly costumes. And generally people felt our performance has been up to the mark. We'd done the best we could.
It's because we complained to BBC audience recruitment and saying, you're getting us the wrong audience. We need a younger audience. And it's not a circus.
Oh, we were quite.
I felt worried at that.
A little nervous, yes. But then nobody, least of all us, knew quite what we were getting into. It wasn't as if we said, no, this is going to be funny all the way through. I think John was he wasn't just joking when he said it could be the first show ever to go out with no laughs at all. Because it might well have happened like that. And that was a token of the fact that we weren't doing the traditional material. There were very few taglines in it and all that. Some of the ideas were very, very strange. And were they going to be funny ideas, or were people just going to say, oh, that's clever, but...
Eric Idle.
The first show is very weird. We did push it. And I know it was a very weird response to the show. It was by no means a triumph. And I used to play football in the park, in Hyde Park, every Sunday. They would go out to think, and they go, that's a weird show of yours. Oh, that's bloody weird. And then they go, that was bloody weird. I like it, though. And they got bloody weird. Hey, that's rather good, that bloody weird show. That's, it picked up. Yeah. Their responses picked up as they kind of got into it.
And it felt like before the first 4 shows, as I remember, was like, God, we thought we won a loser here. Cause